It always starts the same way, doesn't it? She looks at you, not as you are, but as who you might become. And you feel it, that subtle tension in her gaze. Is it admiration? Or maybe it's hunger? That flicker in her eyes isn't about you. It's about potential, possibility. She's not really seeing you. She's scanning you like a blank canvas, trying to imagine the masterpiece she could create. But here's the catch. The masterpiece isn't you. It never was. Carl Jung tried to warn us. Not with feel-good TED Talk language, but with the precision of a man who spent his life diving into the deepest, darkest corners of a human mind. Jung dedicated his career to understanding what he called the unconscious, that part of us that runs silently beneath the surface. And in his exploration, he found something disturbing about human relationships, especially about how women fall in love. According to Jung, women don't always fall in love with men. They fall in love with the idea of a man, with a projection, a fantasy, and what's worse, most of them don't even realize they're doing it. You think she's choosing you? She's not. She's choosing the version of you she's constructed in her head. You're playing a role in a script she's been rehearsing since before she even met you. And when you no longer fit that role, she doesn't rewrite the story. She just casts a new actor. Jung called this projection the animus, the inner masculine figure that lives in every woman's unconscious. When that animus is immature, undeveloped, or unchecked, it can take over. It becomes a tyrant. And here's what that looks like in real life. Women chasing chaos instead of character, power instead of partnership, arguing for the sake of control, dominating instead of connecting, moralizing without ever taking accountability. Jung didn't romanticize this. He called it what it was, spiritual possession. A woman who hasn't integrated her animus isn't responding from her true self. She's acting from subconscious fantasy. She's not with you. She's using you. And you fall for it because you don't know how to see it. You confuse being desired with being understood. You mistake being chosen with being seen. So when she tells you you're different, you believe her. But you're not different. You're just the latest actor playing a part in her story. And when you stop delivering the lines the way she wants them, you're done. Not because you failed, but because you stopped fitting the fantasy. Jung believed the only way to break out of the psychological theater was through something he called individuation. That's the lifelong journey of becoming your true self. Whole, grounded, no longer dependent on external validation. But here's the hard truth. Most men never even begin that journey. Why? Because we've been conditioned to chase approval, to look for permission, to believe that our worth is something given to us by women, by attention, by validation. And as long as we're doing that, we're not men. We're performers. And the moment the crowd gets bored, we're replaced. Individuation isn't glamorous. It's not about becoming alpha. It's not about becoming irresistible. It's brutal. It forces you to face everything you buried. Your weakness, your insecurity, your brokenness. It demands that you stop blaming women for not seeing you and start seeing yourself. Because here's what Jung really understood, what most modern men still don't. You don't become a man by being chosen. You become a man by choosing yourself. You don't earn your worth by being wanted. You earn it by standing alone, fully awake, fully responsible, fully alive. A man who has faced his own unconscious can't be manipulated by someone else's fantasy. He's no longer a puppet. He's not auditioning for a puppet. He's the one writing the dance story. And Jung saw the tragedy in this. How most modern men are so afraid of rejection. They'll reshape themselves into whatever form they think will be accepted. They call it love. They call it compromise. But Jung had another word for it, self-betrayal. He warned that men who refuse to develop their own inner lives become slaves to the projections of women, bending, breaking, softening, until they forget who they were before they put the mask on. And here's the cruel twist. Women can feel that. They can sense when you've molded yourself to fit their fantasy. And the very thing you think will make her stay, your predictability, your availability, your submission, is the very thing that makes her lose interest. Why? Because Jung said the feminine is not drawn to comfort. It's drawn to mystery, to depth, to a man who can't be fully defined. The moment you become predictable, You become invisible. But here's the paradox that keeps men stuck. You're more afraid of being alone than you are of being fake. You'd rather lose your soul than lose him. You'd rather play a part than walk off stage. But Jung taught that until you're willing to stand alone, you'll never be free. He said the journey of individuation is not for the faint-hearted. It's the path of the man who is willing to die before he dies, to let go of the illusions, the roles, the masks, so that something real can finally come alive. But let's be honest, the path is lonely, terrifyingly lonely. As you walk it, you start to see things you can't unsee. You recognize the beings, the personas, the lies people tell themselves to avoid the truth. And when you try to speak it out loud, people mock you. They say you're too cold, too intense, too serious. But you're not the problem. You're just a mirror. And most people hate the mirror, especially when it reflects something they don't want to face. Jung knew this all too well. He spent years studying people who were absolutely terrified of confronting their own shadow, the parts of themselves they deny, repress, avoid. And he noticed something about women, especially those raised in cultures that idolize their emotional nature. They're often told they're pure, complete, intuitive, perfect just as they are. But Jung didn't buy that. He said the greatest threat to women wasn't men. It was their own unconscious animus. That inner voice that speaks with false confidence, false righteousness, and false moral superiority. And if a woman doesn't face and integrate that force within her, it possesses her. She becomes a prisoner of her own projections, blaming every man she meets for a battle she refuses to fight within herself. And it gets darker, because once that illusion starts falling apart, you're left with the confusion, the heartbreak, the betrayal, but not because of something you've done. No, you just stopped playing the part. You were never him. The character she dreamed up, the fantasy her animus projected onto you. That role was never sustainable because it was never real. Jung called this kind of projection inevitable when people don't take responsibility for their own inner world. You didn't deceive her. You didn't trick her. You just failed to be the illusion she needed. And she won't know this would happen. She'll just know something about you stopped feeling right. This is why romantic relationships feel like traps for so many men. Because you walk in believing you're being loved for you, when really, you're being loved for who you appear to be. And when that performance starts slipping, the relationship doesn't just break down, it implodes. Jung said something that still haunts people who take this journey seriously. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And nowhere is that truer than in love. Most people, men and women alike, walk into relationships not as whole people, but as walking projections. They're dragging their unresolved childhood wounds, their unmet needs, their fears, into the arms of someone who's doing the exact same thing. You might call love, you would call it possession. And here's where things flip. The temptation is to blame, to say, women do this, or they're manipulative, or they always leave. But Jung wouldn't let you off that easy. He'd look you straight in the eye and ask, why did you let yourself be chosen by someone who never truly saw you? That question stings, but it's the kind of pain that can wake you up. Because here's the brutal truth. If you haven't faced your own inner feminine, your feelings, your intuition, your sensitivity, you're gonna get trapped by hers. You'll become a slave to her projection, not because she's evil or deceptive, but because you volunteered to play that role. You handed her the script and said, here, tell me who I should be. And you did it because it's easier than facing the emptiness inside yourself. Let's pause there. Most guys don't want to hear this. This is the point where they tune out, flip away, go back to looking for dating tips or confidence hacks. Because this is where the real work begins. Not the flashy, motivational stuff. The quiet, painful stuff. The kind of work Jung talked about. Individuation. The slow, agonizing process of separating who you truly are from the mask you worn for years. It's not sexy. It's not popular. But it's real. You have to sit in the silence. Alone. No press. No validation. Just you, your thoughts, and that voice that tells you you're nothing without him. And you know what? That voice will scream. It will beg. It will try everything to keep you from facing the truth. But Jung said that voice needs to die, because only when that false self burns away can the real you begin to emerge. And here's the twist. That journey, it's lonely, deeply lonely. You start to see things differently. You begin to notice how many people live inside illusions. How many are still wearing masks, still acting out roles they never chose. You start to recognize the gains, the manipulation, the desperate need for validation dressed up as love. And when you try to talk about it, most people won't get it. They'll say you've changed, that you're cold, too distant, too intense. But you're not cold. You're just awake. And people don't like being around someone who's awake when they're still asleep. Jung spent decades working with patients who were absolutely terrified of their own shadow, the dark parts of themselves they never wanted to acknowledge. And in women, he said, that shadow often shows up as the animus, a kind of inner masculine force. When it's undeveloped, it doesn't serve them. It controls them. It becomes this rigid, moralizing, dominating voice that speaks with false certainty and authority. And society doesn't help. Women are often raised being told they're perfect as they are. Intuitive, bored, emotionally complete. But Jung didn't buy it. He warned that if a woman never integrates her animus, never wrestles with it, she'll end up projecting it onto every man she meets, and then blaming those men for the very battles he refuses to fight inside herself. Meanwhile, you think you're the exception. You think you'll be the one to save her. You'll love her more, but all but you've sense out of it. Show you different. But that's not how projection works. It doesn't care about your intentions. It only sees what it wants to see, and when you fail to keep playing the role, she won't just walk away. She'll resent you, not because you were bad, but because you weren't the fantasy she needed. You stopped being the myth she was casting you in, and she won't even know that's what's happening. And that's what Jung was trying to tell us all along. The cycle will repeat over and over until you finally stop asking, why do they keep doing this to me? And start asking, why do I keep choosing this? Why do you keep showing up for roles you didn't audition for and scripts you didn't write, hoping this time the ending will be different? The answer isn't out there. It's in here. Always has been. And here's the trap. You think this realization will make you bitter, make you hate women, make you want to give up. But that's not what happens when you really get it. When you really integrate it, something else happens. You stop needing them to complete you. You stop performing. You stop chasing. You start standing, rooted, present, awake. And ironically, that's when women will be the most drawn to you. Not the ones looking for a puppet, but the rare ones, the ones who've done their own work. The ones who face their animus. The ones who are done playing roles and ready to meet you as equals, not as mothers, not as judges, not as fans, but as whole, real women. And that kind of connection, it's not desperate, it's not manipulative, it's not theatrical. It's just two people, two complete people, meeting in truth. You're not going to find that kind of connection by trying harder. You find it by letting go of the need to be seen a certain way. Letting go of the need to be loved before you've even loved yourself. Letting go of the savior complex, the nice guy routine, the alpha mask, all of it. Jung called this process individuation for a reason. It's not self-improvement. It's not optimization. It's death and rebirth. A full psychic restructuring. A total deconstruction of who you thought you were, so that who you truly are can finally come forward. And the world will punish you for it. Make no mistake. Your awakening will be seen as rebellion. You'll be told you're cold, detached, selfish. People will accuse you of being toxic just for having boundaries. You'll lose relationships. You'll lose approval. You'll lose comfort. But you'll gain something far more valuable. Your soul. Because once you stop participating in the projection game, you stop being a pawn in someone else's unconscious drama. You're no longer the hero, the villain, the thing, the fiction. You're just you. And while that might sound simple, it's the most terrifying and liberating thing you'll ever become. And here's the thing you knew better than anyone. You don't become whole by staying in the light. You become whole by making peace with the dark, with the shadow, with the parts of you were taught to hide. The anger, the fear, the grief, the power, the lust, the loneliness, The voice in you that's still praying from when you were 5 years old and nobody came to help. That part of you doesn't need to be fixed. It needs to be witnessed, owned, integrated. Because if you don't own it, someone else will. That's what projection is, giving someone else the power to live out your unlived life. And in relationships, that always turns toxic. Always. You think you want a woman to love you, but what you really want is a woman who can see you. And that will never happen until you see yourself. Clearly, completely, brutally. So many men today are stuck in cycles of anxiety, depression, confusion. Not because they're weak, but because they've never been shown the map. The inner map. They've been taught to perform, provide, protect, but never to feel, never to fall apart, never to listen to the voice beneath the performance. That voice is you going. It's been with you the whole time. It's not loud. It doesn't scream, but it never lowers. And when you finally get quiet enough to hear it, you'll realize something's sharpened. You never needed her to complete you. You needed a fall. You needed a break. You needed the collapse of the illusion so you could finally see the truth. Not the comforting, self-help version. The raw truth. That you've been asleep. That you've been acting. That your suffering wasn't random. It was a message. And if you've been sick with it, if you've been staying in that fire long enough, something sacred begins to emerge. Something terrifying and beautiful. You begin to realize you're not just some broken man trying to get both. You are a vessel of consciousness, a soul and a body, a king in exile, and the only way back to the throne is through the underworld. Jung knew that every myth, every religion, every epic story is really about one thing, the return to the self. And the feminine, real feminine energy isn't the enemy. It's the gateway, but not the kind you chase in the world, the kind you meet within. Because here's the secret. When you truly integrate your own inner feminine, you don't need to get women. You start understanding them. You see the pain behind the performance. You see the little girl behind the seductress. You see the confusion behind the confidence. And most of all, you see your own part in it. Not with shame, not with blame, but with a fierce clarity. The kind of clarity that ends cycles, that brings contracts, that frees you. So what now? You walk away from the game. You stop trying to be chosen. You stop trying to perform. You get still. You go inward. You descend into the cave Jung warned us about, the one you fear to enter. And in that cave, you meet the dragon, the shadow, the pain, and you don't fight it. You listen, because it has something to teach you. Something no book, no woman, no coach, no YouTube video could ever give you. Yourself, your truth, your wholeness. And when you come out the other side, not everyone will understand you. Some will say you've changed. Some will say you're colder, harder. That's fine. Let them say it. They're still trapped in the projection. You know, you've seen behind the curtain. You met your own unconscious. And now you walk with a different energy, a quiet power, a grounded presence. You don't beg for love. You don't chase validation. You don't play roles. You are. And for the few who are ready, really ready, you become a mirror. Not a fantasy, not a savior, a mirror. And those who are doing the work will see themselves in you. And in that moment, something sacred happens. No masks, no illusions, no projections, just truth, two souls, face to face. And that's not just love, that's alchemy.